After the first two Pokemon Mystery Dungeon games featured iconic legendary Pokemon as their ultimate final bosses, Gates to Infinity came along to shake up the formula, with Super following in its path. Though PMD 3 and 4 still feature legendary Pokemon opposing the main characters, they more so act as guardians for the true villains of their respective games, and the true villains in question aren't even Pokemon at all. This was not unheard of for Pokemon, but it was unheard of for the Mystery Dungeon series. In Gates, you face off against the chilling Bittercold, and in Super, you face off against the eerie Dark Matter. Both of these entities threaten the Pokemon world in different ways, but also act very similar to one another. Additionally, they're both protected and supported by legendary Pokemon, being Kyurem and Yveltal respectively. In this video, I want to dive into analysis of these dangerous life forms and examine not just the things that make them very similar, but also what makes them different. Also, if it's not clear, this video does have spoilers for Pokemon Gates to Infinity and Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon. So if you haven't played those and you do not want story spoilers, do not watch this video any further, and you should play them for yourself because they are really good games. Okay? So let's start by taking a look at Bittercold from Gates to Infinity. In the world of Gates to Infinity, a chilling evil is brewing within the depths of the Great Glacier in the form of a snowflake-like entity. Bittercold is constantly emitting a dark wind that makes it impossible for Pokemon to breathe. Since the day it appeared, it's been slowly growing in power as it attempts to destroy the world. While to the Pokemon, Bittercold is an entity that suddenly appeared one day, its origin is actually due to the negativity of the world itself. Gates to Infinity tells a story of a world where Pokemon are growing apart and becoming selfish as a result. It's illustrated through early story events as the player characters get scammed by a group of carpenters. The world is full of horrible, selfish, and evil Pokemon, and that is why Bittercold exists. The world has become such an awful place that Bittercold is here to effectively reset it. Bittercold's power is actually directly influenced by how good or evil the world is, meaning when the moral balance of the world tilts to evil, Bittercold's power grows strong enough to wipe it all out and try again. It's pretty crazy, but naturally there are forces working against it, including the player character as well as many other humans who were summoned by the Voice of Life to resist Bittercold, as they are the only ones who can truly resist the winds of despair and not suffocate. There is a lot to talk about when it comes to Gates' story, as this game is actually very underrated, but we are here just to talk about Bittercold. In the end, the player character and all the Pokemon they've brought together over the course of the story are able to resist its power. Even the group of Pokemon who were supporting and working for Bittercold had a change of heart, realizing they want to live on for a better future together. Even if the future seems bleak, simply convincing the Pokemon of Post Town that there is hope for the future is an effective method to weakening Bittercold, since its power is directly tied to the feelings of the Pokemon. It's actually really cool, no pun intended. Gates to Infinity teaches us that no matter how bad things get, it's never too late to turn things around for the better. There's definitely more to say about it, but let's move on and talk a little bit about Super Mystery Dungeon's final boss, Dark Matter. In the world of Super Mystery Dungeon, Pokemon are mysteriously turning to stone all over the land, including even legendary Pokemon. The entity with the power to do such a thing is none other than dark matter. A being born from the negative feelings of Pokemon, it seeks to consume life and grow stronger, which it does exactly by turning Pokemon to stone, a result of their life energy being drained. Dark matter can even take possession of Pokemon with even a little bit of darkness in their hearts, notably Yveltal, who works for dark matter alongside others. In the past, an ancient group of Pokemon were successful in destroying dark matter, however their methods resulted in the unavoidable future that dark matter would return again. In the end, the only way to get rid of dark matter's evil forces entirely was actually to just accept it. In the end, the only way to truly get rid of dark matter was to accept it. To accept the negative dark feelings that embodied it. Yeah, so it turns out that setting out to destroy and reject negativity incarnate was the wrong approach. Rather, you need to accept that negative feelings will always exist, no matter what. And if you wanted to stop having control over your life, or threatening to destroy the entire world, then you really just need to accept that they are part of you, part of everyone. And that is what ends up giving up dark matter the peace that it needs to fade away and end its evil plans. I love this outcome. It's so cheesy, just like Bittercold's outcome, but it also makes so much sense. Negative feelings are going to exist no matter what. The only thing you can do is accept them. So with both these final bosses explained, let's move on to talking about the differences and similarities between the two. I've seen a lot of people around under the impression that the two are effectively the same things, and that is definitely not true, and that is exactly why I'm making this video. It is easy to confuse the two as being the same thing since they both centralize their concepts around darkness and negative feelings, but they tackle these ideas in totally different ways. Bittercold is a being that exists as a result of dark feelings, such as evil Pokemon and a loss of hope for a better future. As explained before, Bittercold acts like a scale. The more bad Pokemon there are in the world, and the less overall hope the world has to improve, the more the scale weighs down. As it gets heavier, Bittercold grows in power, eventually becoming strong enough to destroy and reset the entire world, as a result of it becoming too horrible. Dark matter, on the other hand, exists regardless of how good or bad the world is. The world could be a wonderful place full of good Pokemon, but dark matter will still exist as a result of suppressed negative feelings. The dark and sad feelings that Pokemon push away and reject manifest as dark matter, as it seeks to feed and grow stronger to fight back against the world that rejected it. So you can see that while Bittercold and dark matter deal with very similar themes, they function completely differently and exist for different reasons. They are also defeated using different methods. Bittercold can be overpowered by convincing the world that they need to have hope for the future, thus reducing the amount of despair in the world and weakening Bittercold's abilities. Dark matter can be convinced to fade away simply by accepting it, accepting the suppressed negative feelings that caused it to exist in the first place, as it thanks you for showing it the love it really needed all along. To put things in even simpler explanations, Bittercold is something that only really becomes a concern if the world becomes a bad enough place to warrant its influence. But dark matter is an inevitable being that was bound to come into play one way or another from the world's rejected negative emotions. The thing that makes these two entities even more interesting is the fact that they both exist in the same world and a timeline, with Super proving that every Mystery Dungeon game is canon, showing us not only characters from previous games, but even the continents and areas that previous stories took place in. It's all connected in one map. Is it possible that Bittercold and dark matter are related to another in some way? I think so. They're similar enough that they could be related, but different enough that they definitely aren't the same thing. And did you know? While Bittercold is the first non-Pokemon final boss in Mystery Dungeon, it isn't the first non-Pokemon entity in the series. That would actually belong to the Judge of Darkness from Rescue Team, a being that judges Gengar in the Murky Cave by asking the player a series of questions about him. And let's not forget, Gates to Infinity is actually home to 2 non-Pokemon entities. As we also have the Voice of Life, a being that helps you fight Bittercold, and while it takes the form of a Hydreigon, it normally has no physical form, Pokemon or not. But there's even more, because Bittercold wasn't even the first non-Pokemon final boss in a Pokemon game. As mentioned before, a year prior in Pokemon Rumble Blast, the final boss was a giant Rusty Key, who commanded an evil legion of rusty toy Pokemon. The world of non-Pokemon entities in Pokemon runs deeper than you might think. But now I'm getting off topic. And I think I've said what I wanted to in this video. For those who maybe didn't have a full grasp on Bittercold or Dark Matter, or didn't know anything about them if you haven't played the games either, I hope this could help explain their differences and technicalities for you. I think they're both super interesting, so it was really fun to talk about them in detail. And for those of you who are seasoned Mystery Dungeon pros, I hope this video was at least entertaining, as I don't see these aspects of the games talked about too often. Thanks, as always, for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you're all having a good and relaxing start to the new year. I will see you all again soon.